All right, this is video, I think, three. Yeah, game 3 of 9 games that I was playing with my friend to get him from gray to experienced. And I was playing in seat 7 in this game as a liberal. My friend was seat 4. Again, these sort of deep analysis videos are completely unscripted. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the comment section below. I'm always interested for feedback, and I'm usually pretty available, so I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. And without further ado, let's get into it. This was game 3 of 9, and I believe it is a liberal win. And I will just give pointers to both teams to see what they could have done a little bit differently, maybe. That might have changed the course of the outcome. Also, I should mention now, I guess, I'm not really going to bother going through the chats. And the reason for that is because it would be too time consuming. A lot of your chats are sort of weighted and structured in a sort of way to influence the game. And that's something you kind of have to learn on your own organically, in my opinion. And really, you just sort of should say whatever's on your mind. There's really no reason not to. So anyway, without further ado, 1-5 goes in, plays blues, all great. 2-6 comes in, and this is already a really shit start for fascist. a liberal libgov has played a blue, and even though 5 is a forced blue chancellor, he's not going to get locked out of the game because he's a blue chancellor, and a forced blue chancellor is always going to be seen as better than a forced red chancellor, even though they're essentially equivalent. The meta, so to speak, on the site really does not account for this. It does not account for the situations where 6 is a liberal in this situation. So because 2-6 is fascist, and that's 2 fascists playing 1 red, that's a really bad start for fascist. I believe 3 here, yeah, he's going to conflict. Yeah, he's going to conflict on Iv. Now, this is a good play, actually, by 3. And I'm going to talk a little bit into why. See, this is really good. So far, I've only, again, reiterating my point from the last video, I've come back to these videos about a week or 2 later from when I played them. And there's a wealth of different things going on that is going to be beneficial for me to talk about. So 3 does a really good thing here, and that is conflicting a liberal on Inv, and then investigating a liberal as fascist. So his the technical phrase, the jargon sort of phrase would be double dipping. A legitimate double dip is where a liberal gets a blue, passes the blue to a fascist chancellor. The fascist plays the red. The liberal gets the invest power, and then investigates another fascist as fascist, of course, because they're liberal and they can't lie. And when that legitimate double dip happens, that's great for liberals because that freezes out 2 fascists. It does not happen that way too often, though. And so the problem is, if you're ever a liberal in that situation, you're going to, especially on this site, you're going to be hard-pressed to try and convince everybody that you are legitimate. There will be, the meta does, of course, assume, at first that these players are all frozen, right? And so we should be trying the other players. But what this essentially does, and the reason I say this is a good play from his position is he basically has 2 fascists frozen. And that is a losing situation for fascists. The fascists need to be getting into into governments, if they're going to stand a reasonable chance of winning this game. And so what he's doing now is he's freezing 2 liberals back. He's freezing himself as well. So now you have 5 players in total that are all basically frozen. I mean, 2-6 is not technically a conflict, and therefore it's not technically frozen. But you have now 2 players, 2 liberals that have played a blue, and 2 fascists that have played a red. And people are going to favor those 2 liberals over the fascists. So this is a good play. It tries to balance the game back into, just balance the game back to a more neutral state. My friend, I'm pretty sure his reaction to being in fascist like this is to almost immediately assume I'm liberal, because I'd be hard pressed to do this in this manner. For one thing, he knows that 3 is a fascist, right? And so it's really difficult for me to also be fascist if 2-6 is lib-lib. If I'm fascist with 3, I'd just play a blue. That's the standard sort of play when you have a fascist gov, is you get 1 blue, you play a blue, and even though it's a free blue for liberals, it allows you to at least gain sort of favor with liberals. That's why having fascist govs is detrimental for the fascist team as well. Like, this seating 2-3-6 is not all that great for fascists. So anyway, moving forward, I actually yaw 4 here because my conflict aimed in fascist, and we even get 5. 5 is being overly generous here. There's really not an incentive for 5 to yaw 4 here, because 4 is now in conflict, and if 3 is liberal, that's he's giving the game back to fascist as a liberal. But it is good for me, and it's good for my friend, because we can automatically assume that he's liberal and doing this, because a fascist would never do it, right? Like, that's the sort of basic logic. Maybe it'll happen every once in a while, like a fascist will yaw with liberals to try and gain favor, but now we know, like, there's probably 3 fascists and 1 liberal in the 9s. Like, that's just a nice bit of information that we get. And then, of course, we all yaw 5-1. No reason not to. They play blue together. This is great for liberals so far. And then 7-4 happens, and the same sort of votes come up. And here, I mean, okay, I want to talk about what this is. The reason I pick 4 here, even though he's in conflict, is because this is a sort of meta pick where you pick anti the double dip. And what that means is you want to test, it's a decent idea to test the double dip itself, right? Because let's say 3 is a liberal and this is 2 fascist. Well, in that case, they're going to want to play a blue. So you get a blue, and that's great. What if this guy's a fascist still, and one of us is a fascist? Well, in that case, what you might have happen, since I'm a liberal, let's say I'm a liberal in C7 and my friend is fascist with 3, and that does happen, by the way. Sometimes fascists will im their own fascist as fascist, just to shake things up. Well, if I get a blue, then he might conflict. And now that gives great information to the liberal team, because after the people in a double dip are in conflict with each other, now you know that there are 2 fascists in the double dip. Like, there's no way for there not to be 2 fascists in the double dip. Either the two people are fascist together and they've just conflicted, or 3 is a fascist with either 7 or 4. One of those 2 statements has to be true. And what that means is that even though 2-6 is not conflict, it means that the people that look liberal are probably liberal. At least one of them has to be liberal. So that's why it's a good idea to trust the anti-double dip meta. And there's another reason too. What if 3 is a fascist and 4-7 happens to be liberal? In that case, you're definitely going to get a blue unless they draw poorly. And there's another good aspect, and this is why I would say 3 actually has the most incentive to yaw, whether he's liberal or fascist, by the way. If 3 is liberal and he has 2 fascists that he's looking at, or if he's fascist and he knows there's a fascist here, or if he's fascist and he knows there's 2 liberals here, if they get 2 reds, they have to SE outside of each other. They can't SE each other. They have to SE somebody else, and that is a positive for 3, whether he's liberal or fascist. If that doesn't make sense to you, I can explain it in more detail in the comments section. I think I've kind of gone over this subject for long enough. So that doesn't get yawed anyway, so it doesn't matter within yaw 1 because he's the next most liberal player, of course. And he plays a blue. It's kind of funny. He picks 4, who's in conflict, and the problem is that he has no other picks. Like, he can pick 2 or 6 if he wants, but what happens when he conflicts? Well, now we have a real big problem because who knows who the liberals are. He picks 4. That's not really a logical pick from my point of view. I would say the most logical pick would be 2, even though 2 is fascist, and I know for a fact that that's worse. And you know, in my perspective in the game, I would say 4 is good. But a more sort of standardish pick would be to pick in, 2, 6 are not in conflict. So you might as well try one of them. Maybe one of them is liberal, for instance. So they then play a blue. This is good because I think what's going to happen here is we're going to 9-4, 4-5, and that's fine. It's a good situation for me either way because I'm pretty sure that 4 is liberal at this point. There's really not an incentive for 4 to play a blue, and I know that 3 is fascist. Okay, so I can't say for certain that 1 and 5 are both liberal because I don't know if 2 and 6 are both fascist, even though this is a sort of common play when a fascist government gets red, red, red. But it works out really well in liberals' favors that this all happens. And so even though I'm kind of getting shut out of the game as a liberal, I have no compunctions being the shutout liberal. Because at the end of the day, there's really not a huge chance that I'm getting shot. I've been voting with 5 the whole game, and I've been agreeing with what people are saying. And even though I got 9'd, I'm really not, that's not that unreasonable to me. So this gets yawed by every liberal and 1 fascist, even, 3 yaws his own conflict. And again, that's not a bad thing for the same reason that yawing 7-4 as 3 is also not a bad thing. And then 5-1 gets yawed, and they play a blue. So again, open shut case. Not really much that fascists can do here. Fascists got kind of screwed by the seeding. They got really bad RNG with the red, red, red draw by 2, and he doesn't conflict 6. I think conflicting, like making up a blue there, might be a better idea as 2, even though he's given 2 reds. At least you're giving Hitler information, and that does make him a better sort of pick. And it probably doesn't force 3 to double dip. But either way, it's going to be a tough game going forward. Even if you conflict and then 3 decides I'm going to take IMV and IMV7 fascist, that still leaves 3 liberals that are relatively all clean, able to play to each other. And as you can see, they were, none of them got reds, so you never get to Hitler's zone. So this was kind of just a lucky sort of game. I'm glad I got to talk a little bit about double dipping and the virtues of it. Again, any questions, I'll try to answer them as well as I can. Signing off for now.